My stepkids said I was an unwanted guest. I quietly left, taking the car, the insurance, and every privilege with me. The silence that followed said everything. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. My name is Jason. I'm 44. I married Melissa 8 years ago. With her came 2 sons, Tyler, now 19, and Noah, 15. Their father, Greg, disappeared after the divorce like smoke in a storm. No child support, no visits, just the occasional birthday card with a crooked signature and no return address. The kind of man who believed that disappearing acts were fatherhood in some abstract sense, out of sight but always on their minds. And they kept him there, on a pedestal he never built. Meanwhile, I was in the trenches. I came with my hands full. A steady job in civil engineering. A house I paid off early through a decade of skipping luxuries. I brought stability, clean schedules, groceries in the fridge, dental insurance, a backyard with a grill and a patch of garden. I built them a home, but not once did it feel like mine. I remember the exact moment the illusion broke. It wasn't some explosion, no screaming match or dramatic betrayal. Just an ordinary evening, the kind that fools you into thinking you belong. Melissa was working a double shift at the ER. I made dinner, roasted chicken thighs, potatoes, steamed broccoli. 2 plates, one for Noah, one for me. He was 10 at the time, sitting at the counter with his tablet, earbuds dangling. I called his name twice. No answer. Then I walked over, put the plate down and said, "Dinner." He looked up at me. No blink, no smile. Just said it, plain and practiced, like he'd been waiting for the right moment. "You're not one of us. Just some guest no one asked for." He went back to his tablet. I stood there holding my plate like it was evidence of a crime. For a second, I thought maybe he was parroting something he'd heard on TV. Maybe it was just a moment of childish cruelty. But I turned to Tyler, 15 at the time, who was half watching from the living room. He didn't flinch, didn't correct him, just gave a lazy shrug and said, "Whatever," and walked off. That's when I understood. It wasn't a one-time outburst. It was policy, family policy, unspoken but enforced. From the beginning, I didn't want to be just mom's new husband. I stepped into that house with my sleeves rolled up and my guard down. I volunteered for everything: parent-teacher nights, soccer practices, late-night science fair projects. I was the one who sat in the ER with Noah when he broke his wrist on the trampoline. The one who taught Tyler to drive. Who paid for his second chance after he failed the test the first time and didn't tell his mom. I became the guy who drove them to practice, fixed their bikes, paid for their braces. I never kept a ledger. Not then. I just kept showing up. I thought if I worked hard enough, long enough, they'd see me. Not just see me, claim me. But the years passed and I was still the outsider in the photographs. They'd stand on either side of Melissa, arms slung over her shoulders. I'd be off to the side, literally, cropped out, or just barely in frame. Tyler started tagging Greg in his posts again, even though Greg hadn't sent more than a voicemail in 2 years. The worst part? It wasn't anger, not even hatred. It was indifference. On Christmas morning, they'd light up at the gifts labeled "From Dad." The ones Greg mailed with 2-day shipping and no note. Melissa knew they came from me. She saw the Amazon order history, the charges, but she never corrected them. She just let it play out. I'd watch from the doorway, my coffee cooling in my hand, as they unwrapped the latest gadget and called him the best. He wasn't even there, but he never had to be. His ghost was louder than my presence. At Tyler's high school graduation, they gave each senior a moment to thank their families. Melissa was glowing, camera ready. I stood behind her, arms crossed, watching our kid. My kid, I told myself, take the stage. And then he said, "Wish Dad could have made it. Not like you. Not like me." I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. But I felt something inside me curl inward, like muscle pulling back from a burn. The worst part? Melissa smiled. She didn't wince, didn't lean toward me, didn't say a word in the car on the ride home. just nodded along as if it made perfect sense that Greg's absence carried more weight than my years of presence. I started to see the patterns I'd ignored. Melissa had her own version of silence. A silence so loud it could kill a room. Every time the boys shut me out, she stayed quiet. Every time I made a rule or asked for accountability, she overruled it with a sigh and a pat on their heads. Teenagers, she'd say, like that was a justification. Like I hadn't once been one myself and known better. I remember when Tyler got caught skipping class. I found the notices buried in his backpack. Melissa said, "Don't make a big deal out of it. He's under pressure." So I didn't. I wrote a check for tutoring instead. Bought him a planner. Encouraged him to talk to his teachers. The next week, I heard him tell Noah, laughing, "Jason's such a tryhard." Tryhard. I held that word in my mouth like gravel. The truth is, I wanted a family. I wanted them, not just Melissa. I didn't sign up for a marriage. I signed up for a life. A house with muddy footprints, late-night fevers, and pancake Sundays. I told myself over and over, this is worth it. They'll come around. But they never did. Every time I gave more, they pulled further away. I replaced Noah's shattered laptop without telling Melissa because I didn't want her to worry. He never thanked me, just muttered, "Finally." Like the world had corrected itself. Tyler needed new cleats. I paid $140 for them. He left them on the porch in the rain a week later. Said, "Whatever, I didn't like them anyway." The contempt wasn't even subtle anymore. It was folded into every moment. Noah would whisper about me on calls with his friends. "Nah, just the step guy. Not my real dad." Tyler stopped inviting me to his school events entirely. I found out he was on the debate team from a flyer crumpled in the trash. But Melissa, she played peacemaker, not advocate. She'd rub my shoulders and say, "You know they're just kids. They'll get it one day." One day. I waited for that day like a fool waits for rain in a drought. Every gift, every chore, every extra mile. I told myself it was one brick closer to belonging. But bricks don't build homes when the foundation is rejection. And I began to see it for what it was. They didn't hate me. That would have required emotional investment. They just didn't see me. I was the ghost with a credit card. The handyman who didn't require thanks. The man who lived in their house, loved their mother, and existed solely to make their lives easier. Even Melissa, her love was conditional, performative, sweet kisses in public, smiles at dinner parties. But when the house was quiet and I reached for her hand, she was already turned away, exhausted, not in the mood. Maybe tomorrow, always maybe. Eventually, I stopped trying to join the table. I'd eat late in the garage sometimes, pretended I had work to do. I learned to live like a tenant in my own house. Pay the bills, clean the gutters, stay out of the way. But I never missed a payment. Never skipped a birthday. Never forgot to check the tires before winter. And in all that time, not once, did Tyler or Noah call me Dad. Not even by accident. Not even when they were scared or sick or bleeding. I was always Jason. Even Melissa never corrected them. She didn't have to, because the message was clear. I was never one of them. And maybe I never would be. It was supposed to be a reset. 7 days. A private cabin in the Idaho mountains. Lakefront. Sauna. Fishing pier. A wide open sky with stars so thick you could drink them. I spent weeks planning it, months saving. $5,800 total, rental, gas, groceries, supplies. I even took time off work during the peak of the quarter, when missing a single meeting could cost a contract. But I needed it. We needed it. I told myself this was the final offering. One last bridge. One last shot at something whole. They were quiet when I pitched it. Noah asked if there was Wi-Fi. Tyler asked if he could bring his gaming laptop. Melissa just kissed my cheek and said, "That sounds lovely, babe." I took that silence as a win. Stupid. 1 week before we were set to leave, Melissa came into the living room while I was reviewing the final checklist. She had that look. The one people wear when they know they're about to hurt you but hope you won't notice. like trying to walk on broken glass without bleeding. She cleared her throat, sat on the edge of the couch like she was waiting for a verdict. And then she said, "The boys were wondering if it's okay to invite their dad, just for a couple days. They miss him." I remember the way the words landed. Heavy, but somehow hollow, like hearing the echo of a punch before it lands. I didn't speak right away. I just looked at her. Not angry, not confused, just tired. Tired in a way that sinks beneath the bones. "To my trip?" I asked, calm, almost casual. She nodded like we were discussing whether. "It's not about you," she said. "They just want to see him. You're their stepdad." It's not the same. That sentence cut deeper than any insult, because it wasn't shouted. It was decided. I stared at her and thought, she believes this. She believes that my love, my years, my money, my time, all of it was less than, that Greg's absence still outranked my presence. And right then, something inside me went still, not shattered, not flared up in anger, just still, like the moment right before the tide pulls out for good. That night, I went into Tyler's room. He was on his bed, scrolling through his phone. No music, no distractions. I stood there for a long time before I spoke. "Do you really see me as someone who doesn't belong?" I asked. He looked up, blinked once. His voice was flat, cold, rehearsed. "This is a family trip. You're just an unwanted guest. We didn't ask for you." And there it was, the final verdict. Not a trial, just a sentence. I nodded. I didn't scream, didn't plead, just left the room and closed the door behind me. That was the last time I spoke to him as his stepfather. The next morning, I got up early. While they were still asleep, I sat at the dining table with my laptop and phone, and I started cutting cords. Changed the cabin reservation to a one-bedroom. Called the insurance provider and removed Melissa and the boys from the policy. Called the bank and split our accounts. Took my name off their phone plan. Froze the college savings account. Re-registered the SUV in my name, the one they used more than I ever did. I moved through it with calm precision. No rage, no spite, just facts. Cold, hard facts. By noon it was done. Every financial artery they fed from had been clamped. Then I wrote a note and left it on the kitchen counter. "Since I'm just an unwanted guest, enjoy your trip with Greg. This one's on him." I packed a single duffel, took the truck, drove 4 hours west, arrived at the cabin before sundown. Alone. The cabin was perfect. Pinewood floors, stone fireplace, windows that opened to a silent lake. I cracked a beer, sat on the porch and listened to the quiet. For the first time in 8 years, it didn't feel like silence was punishing me. Felt like peace. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Melissa. I didn't answer. Then Tyler. Then Melissa again. Then a text. "Where are you? We need to talk." Noah's name never came up. Another text. "You blindsided the kids. This was supposed to be a family trip." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Family trip. And I wasn't invited. I opened another beer. Let the notifications pile up. They called 5 more times that night. Melissa tried using other numbers. Even tried her mother's phone. I didn't block her. I just didn't pick up. Because when someone tells you you're not family, the worst thing you can do is prove them wrong by sticking around. I spent the next 3 days alone. Fishing. Reading. Cooking for one. It wasn't joyful, not really. But it was clean. Honest. And that meant something. On the 4th day I got a letter. Handwritten. Folded twice. No return address. Just my name in shaky cursive. I knew the handwriting. It was Noah's. "I'm sorry, Jason. I know I hurt you. You did more for us than anyone. Please forgive me." It didn't say more than that. No excuses. No justifications. No mention of Greg. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stared at the page until the ink blurred. Then I folded it back up and placed it in the nightstand drawer. Because apologies without change are just noise. And I've lived in noise long enough. Melissa kept texting. "Tyler wants to talk. You could have just said something. You overreacted." Overreacted. That's the word people use when they realize you've finally stopped playing the role they cast you in. When the one who always swallowed pain finally spits it out. I didn't reply. Not to her. Not to Tyler. The cabin ended up costing less than I thought. I canceled the full-week plan and left early. Went back to Omaha. But I didn't go home. I checked into a hotel and rented a storage unit. Slowly, methodically, I started pulling out clothes, tools, my guitar, important documents, birth certificates, passports, photos, only the ones that included me. I didn't leave a note this time, because I already had. They just didn't read it. Melissa sent one last text. Come home, please. But she never said why. Not because we love you. Not because we were wrong. Just come home. Home. As if it ever was. When I pulled into the driveway 3 days later, the house looked the same. Same weeds in the cracks of the walkway. Same chipped paint on the porch steps I'd meant to fix next weekend. Same wind chime I hung the first spring after we moved in. Still clinking against nothing. But it wasn't my home anymore. I stepped out of the car. The air was thick. Late August humidity wrapped everything in silence. No dogs barking. No TVs from open windows. Just stillness. And then the door opened. Melissa stood on the porch like she was guarding something. Tyler behind her, arms folded. Noah just behind them both. Eyes low, hands in his hoodie pockets. No one spoke. I didn't wave. Didn't ask to come in. I just stared. Watched them watching me, all three framed in the doorway like some broken photograph. That moment, that silence. It told me everything I'd ever wondered. Noah didn't apologize. Tyler didn't sneer. Melissa didn't reach for me. They just stood there, expecting me to break the moment. To ask. To beg. To try again. But I'd already done all of that. For 8 years. I turned, popped the trunk, and started unloading boxes. No one helped. Not one of them stepped off the porch. I passed them without a word, carrying my own weight. Like always, I packed the rest of my things in under 20 minutes. Tools from the shed. Records from the office. Old clothes still folded in drawers they never opened. As I left the bedroom, Melissa followed me down the hall. You can't just go, she said. I already did, I answered. She stood in front of the door. Her eyes weren't wet. They were confused, like she'd expected this to go differently. As if my silence was some strategy, not a decision. You blindsided them, she said. You made this worse. I turned to her. I made this worse? Melissa, they called me a guest in the house I paid for. They said I wasn't family. And you stood there and let it happen. She shook her head like I'd missed something obvious. They're just kids. You're the adult. I was the adult, I said. Which means I carried the weight. I made the sacrifices. I waited years for a single drop of respect. All I got was silence. Including yours. She stepped back. Not because I raised my voice, I never had to. But because she knew it was true. I walked past her and loaded the last box. Closed the trunk. Got into the car. She stood there on the porch. Still saying nothing. Still letting the damage speak for her. And that was the last time I saw her at that house. 2 days later, I signed a month-to-month lease on a small apartment near the edge of town. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, cracked linoleum, a view of a brick wall. But it was mine. No ghosts. No cold shoulders at the dinner table. No boys watching me like I was a stranger. Just silence. But this time, the silence was clean. I stopped checking my phone. Melissa kept sending messages. The boys are struggling. You could at least talk to Noah. You owe them that much. I didn't reply, because I owed them nothing anymore. They made that clear. But Noah kept trying. 3 weeks after I left, I got a second letter. No envelope this time. Just folded notebook paper, left in the mailbox of my new place. No stamp. He had come here. Jason, I'm sorry again. I didn't mean what I said. I was just angry. You did more for us than anyone. I miss you. Please don't disappear. Please. I read it 3 times. Then I slid it into the same drawer as the first. He was trying. I'll give him that. But trying isn't the same as changing, and I've spent too long pretending they're the same thing. Meanwhile, Tyler stayed silent. Not a word. Not even to curse me. I heard from a neighbor that he deferred his college semester. Rumors about money troubles. I didn't check in. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. Because I knew exactly what he was facing. I had built the bridge he crossed every day, and now it was gone. Melissa tried a different approach. One Sunday morning, she showed up at the diner I go to for breakfast. Sat across from me without asking. She looked thinner. More tired. Not sad. Just frayed. Like a woman trying to keep a house warm with a matchstick. She didn't ask how I was. She just said, "You really hurt them." I put down my fork. Wiped my hands on a napkin. Looked her straight in the eyes. "They told me I wasn't family. You let them. I just finally believed you." She didn't reply. Just stared at the coffee between us like it might explain things better than I could. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "I fed them. Drove them. Paid for everything. Sat through every insult. And you stood behind them, not me. That's what broke this, Melissa. Not a cabin trip. Not the money. The silence." She blinked fast. Took a breath like she might argue. Then she said, "Noah cries himself to sleep sometimes." I stared at her. Let the words hang. "Good," I said. "It means he finally feels something." She slapped the table hard enough to make the silverware jump. People turned to look. She whispered through clenched teeth, "You're not this cold. You're not." But I was, because kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction. And I had been destroying myself for years in that house. Bit by bit. Sacrifice by sacrifice. Until there was nothing left of me but debt and expectation. Melissa didn't stay long. She left without finishing her coffee. No hug. No final word. Just walked out. Weeks passed. Then a month. I got used to quiet evenings. Long walks. The taste of food I cooked for myself. I learned to stop apologizing to the air. To stop expecting footsteps at the door. To stop explaining my choices to people who never listened. Then came the third letter. This one wasn't from Noah. It was from Tyler. Folded neatly. Typed. No signature. "I get it now. I didn't before. You were there. Every day. And I treated you like a ghost. That wasn't fair. I'm sorry. I was angry at Greg. But I took it out on you. Because you were there. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I was wrong." I read it once. Then again. I didn't know what to feel. There was no request. No manipulation. No plea. Just truth. But sometimes truth comes after the fire has burned the house down. Sometimes it's just ash. And the thing about ash is, it's too late to breathe it back into flame. I didn't write back. Because forgiveness isn't something you give to be polite. It's something you offer when the debt has been paid, not just acknowledged. And he was still in arrears. I don't live in a house anymore. I live in a box. A one-bedroom apartment with thin walls and neighbors I don't know. The water runs brown for 10 seconds every morning. And the heat wheezes in the winter. But it's mine. Every creak, every crack, every flickering bulb mine. And not once has anyone here told me I don't belong. I have space now. Not a metaphor. Real physical space. Space where I can hear myself think. Where I don't brace for footsteps or arguments. Where I don't cook for people who resent the hand that feeds them. Melissa still texts. Not every day. Not even every week. But enough. Her name lights up my screen like a candle I don't want to touch anymore. Sometimes it's small talk. Sometimes it's silence wrapped in words. "Hope you're eating well. Noah asked if you're okay. Tyler's applying for jobs. And once, just once, I miss you." I don't answer most of them. Because what do you say to someone who watched you drown and called it parenting? Some nights, I sit by the window with a glass of water and listen to the city breathe. Horns, sirens, strangers arguing on the street below. I watch the yellow streetlights blink in rhythm. No expectations. No roles to perform. Just noise that doesn't ask for anything. That's how I know I've healed, because I no longer crave the silence of that house. I used to think quiet meant safety. that if no one yelled, everything was fine. But that's not true. Silence can wound just like words. It's the things unsaid that rot you from the inside. Melissa's silence, Tyler's silence, even Noah's before the letters. They all stood there and watched me carry it. The bills, the chores, the meals, the disappointments. And when I collapsed, they called it abandonment. But it wasn't. It was survival. The truth is, I wasn't just their stepfather. I was their mule, their butler, their banker, their background noise. And for years, I believed that loving them meant accepting that role. It doesn't. Love without boundaries is just servitude. So I made new rules. I pay for myself now. No one else. I cook what I want. I sleep when I want. I buy things for pleasure, not permission. And I no longer feel guilty for walking away from people who never met me halfway. A month ago, Noah sent a package. No return address, just my name, taped carefully. Inside was a framed photo. From the year I took them camping in Colorado. The only trip I remember where no one fought. In the photo, I'm standing with Noah on my shoulders. He's smiling. I forgot that smile. There was a note taped to the back. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to have this. Thank you for being there when no one else was. I stared at that photo for hours, not because of nostalgia, but because I realized how long I'd been carrying ghosts. Ghosts of what could have been. Ghosts of the man I tried to be for them. Ghosts of every moment I swallowed my pride because I thought it made me strong. But strength isn't swallowing disrespect. It's knowing when to spit it back out. Melissa once told me years ago, during one of our better nights. Wine in hand, candles burning, boys asleep upstairs, that she admired how much I gave. You make us feel safe, she said, even when things are falling apart. I should have asked her then, and who makes me feel safe? But I didn't, because I thought love meant never asking for anything in return. That was my first mistake. I've made peace with not being in their lives. Truly. Took time. Therapy. Long walks. Mornings where I made coffee for no one but myself. But I got there. Because family isn't who you bleed for. It's who bleeds with you. And when it mattered most, none of them did. Not Melissa, who let them mock me while I paid their way. Not Tyler, who weaponized my presence against me like it was a favor he never asked for. Not Greg, who walked away and still got called Dad. Only Noah ever came close. And even he waited until the lights were off and the door had closed. Regret after the fall is easy. Respect during the climb, that's what matters. So here I am, 44, alone, peace. I still dream of them sometimes. Not in anger, in fragments. A laugh, a smell, a hallway echo, some small memory my body can't forget. But when I wake, I'm grateful. Grateful that those echoes are far away. That they live behind a wall I no longer have to patch. Melissa once wrote, maybe one day we can sit down and talk. Just you and me. No guilt. No blame. But blame isn't the problem. Memory is. I remember too well what it cost me to love people who didn't love me back. I remember the look on Tyler's face when he called me a guest. I remember the sound of Melissa's silence when he did. I remember how Noah looked away when I packed my last box. And I remember standing in the kitchen, 8 years into this, holding 2 plates, wondering if maybe tonight would be different. It wasn't. So no, I don't want to sit down and talk. Because everything that needed to be said already was. They said I wasn't family. And I listened. Now I live like it. And you reading this, maybe you've carried what I carried. Maybe you're waiting for them to see you, to claim you, to say you matter. But let me tell you something. You already do. You don't need their permission to be whole. You don't need their last name to have worth. And you damn sure don't need to keep bleeding for people who hand you knives. So ask yourself, like I finally did, when they drew their line, did you listen? Because I did. And that silence that followed, it wasn't empty. It was clean.